Welcome to Inside Games Daily, the only gaming news show brave enough to think a janked out 20-year-old game could be improved a little bit.
A little bit, a touch. Hey, we don't buy Bethesda games because they're perfect out of the box, all right? We buy them because they're ambitious, maybe stumble a little bit, but it's a good time all around.
Yeah, the recently released Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered is doing extremely well. It's very, very fun. Bethesda announced the game reached 4 million players last Friday.
Yeah, and by and large, I think everybody's having a good time with it, even though, been some time. Maybe some of that nostalgia haze is worn off a little bit. Maybe the 18 millionth time you're digging through your bags trying to find one particular potion and you just can't. You start to realize that maybe some things have gotten better over time.
Yeah. Some classic gameplay systems are reminding folks the old ways were not always the best. So the primary complaint seems to be Oblivion's world scale feature. This is a nightmare, Lawrence. It really is. I played the original, I played the remaster, and the scale is just all the way off.
My keenest memories of Oblivion are being at the end of the game and just downing speed potions so I could just sprint through all the Oblivion gates because it just wasn't worth it to fight anything anymore. So yeah, that's still around. That is in contrast to Morrowind, where there wasn't any scaling. You could just wander off in the wrong direction and get flattened by a Daedric Lord or whatever, and that was very confusing and intimidating for people. So this was Bethesda's answer to that. It got involved further in Skyrim, but yeah, we're getting a taste of that episode 4 right now.
So this means that you never really feel a sense of growing stronger in Oblivion, and in fact, can make a lot of game events much more difficult if you get to them later in the game.
Yeah, it leads to some metagaming about, okay, you need to be under this level when you get to this quest, and then you need to be, yeah. Accordingly, it seems that the game's original designer isn't even a fan of that system. Speaking with Video Gamer, original Oblivion designer Bruce Nesmith expresses a lot of admiration for the remaster, but admits that the world scaling just didn't really work.
So Bruce Nesmith said, quote, "I think the world leveling with you was a mistake, and that's proven out by the fact that it did not happen the same way in Skyrim. That we came up with a much, much better way to continue to provide the player challenge without making it feel like, oh, it doesn't matter that I went up in levels, the dungeon went up in levels with me."
Yeah, or just, made everything harder, kind of is how it goes. And apparently it's not just the ex-employees that think Oblivion could stand a little more modernization.
As reported by Eurogamer, Bethesda's solicited requests for improvements to the game on Reddit and Discord, which they're going to get anyways, really. And some clear trends appear in what folks are asking for here.
Yeah, but this is it's a very civil way to do it, and also maybe a way to target some hot fixes or things to add in a patch. The neat thing is, though, when you're reading over player responses, you start to see certain things come up a lot. So, one of the most common requests that we've seen is, of course, about difficulty and balance, based on what we were talking about.
Specifically, that the gap in difficulty between adept and expert is just too vast. It's funny, I started the game on normal, and everybody that's like, what difficulty are you playing on? I'm always like, normal, and they're like, good. Don't play it on expert. It's impossible. It doesn't make any sense. And I was like, wow, I got really lucky.
Yeah, it sounds like a mistake I would fall into, to be honest, and then just spend hours and hours in torture. Psychological Bear 9 has apparently done. They write on Reddit, quote, "I'm still having moments of actually having to try at level 19 if I'm ganged up on, but for the most part my health barely goes down on adept, even going out of my way not to overlevel constitution, while expert makes even single mobs a slog at times."
Yeah, according to a Chode Talker, oh, perfect. The scaling is pretty ridiculous on expert, 3.5 times the damage taken and 0.28 damage dealt from adept to expert, so that is not at all equal.
Yeah, that's just a massive, slamming the numbers one way or the other to try to create difficulty. It doesn't really work like that, but yeah. So, of course, all the scaling and the separation and difficulties, that's in addition to, like we said, the general complaints that late-game enemies scale up way too high and just take forever to kill.
Of course, there are a slew of requests to update the UI and add quality of life improvements. Now, the remastered version has done a really good job of all of that, but there's always more for Bethesda games.
Yeah, especially when you're kind of doing the same thing over and over again. Rifling through the book tends to take a lot longer when you just want to play the game. So here again is a list of the most commonly requested features. Hopefully we'll see them in the game soon. A lot of folks wanted to be able to see your current carry weight and then also the weight of things that you're picking up in the screen where you pick them up, as opposed to throwing them in your bag, being over encumbered, then having to rifle back through your bag to find what you picked up and throw it back on the ground.
Oh boy, that'd be great. Add a cleared tag to dungeons on the map, so then that way you don't just accidentally walk in and be like, wait a minute, I think I already did this. Because a lot of the dungeons look exactly the same.
Yeah, and also, speaking of the map, a lot of people, if you're in a dungeon, want the map to automatically zoom into the interior view. which some people didn't even know the game had. So that's kind of a indication that maybe the UI could use some polish there.
Either add a separate tab for keys in the inventory, like the actual keys that you put into a lock, or group them into a key ring, because they are just scattered throughout your inventory, and most of them you've already used and you don't need it anymore ever.
Yeah, but you don't even know that. Also, they have a variety of different names, right? So they just show up kind of inserted all over the place. Good times. A lot of people requested some form of item scaling for unique items. So the named items with custom properties, if you do a quest and get a reward at a low level, 3 levels later, it's worthless. But it seems like it's important and it has like cool effects and stuff, so you'd like to keep using it.
There's a lot of mods out here that will fix all these problems, and I've installed a few of them already for quality of life stuff, but the game just needs this stuff. Add an option to toggle UI elements and the interactive glow around items and objects. That would be super helpful.
Yeah, immersive mode. And also to disable the name tag pop-up for your horse, so it's not constantly like floating in the way while you're riding the horse.
Stupid shadow mirror. It's Bethesda tradition at this point to wait for the modding community to fix these games. I mean, they're already doing it, and the game's only been out a week. I don't know what it is. Maybe Bethesda. It seems like, according to the story that we are reporting on, that these Bethesda designers just didn't have any time, and they're usually just like, whatever, just throw it in, and then they move on. And because we had a designer saying it was a mistake, that they made a mistake, and it seems like a lot of these things are probably mistakes that they just didn't have time to fix.
Yeah, or they made a choice. Remasters like this are always tough. What aspects of the old game gave it the charm versus, I think, I don't want to invite too many negative comparisons, but if you look at something like Starfield, it's a very comfortable game to play in a lot of ways. It even its vanilla launch, I think, had a lot of quality of life and especially UI stuff that was just baffling, but it sure did take out a lot of the friction, and a lot of the character kind of got yanked out with it. So I think if you're working in a vacuum before this is in, tens of thousands, millions of players' hands, you make some choices about what you think worked for the experience and what didn't. I mean, they changed the leveling, right? Because Oblivion's method was pretty weird. Made it more Skyrim-y, which I think makes it easier to play. But yeah, I think now that the game's out and people are, spending tens, hundreds of hours in it, those little repetitive annoyances are starting to stack up, which is a good time to ask people in a group like this, hey, what do you want changed, or what would you like changed? And I think from there too, it's not like Bethesda's just going to take everything and treat it like a to-do list. I think they're still going to apply a little bit of restraint maybe in what they choose and don't choose to fix, or choose and don't choose to work on. But yeah, who knows? But you're right, the mod makers are already on the scene, as they usually are, working hard to make our lives better.
Big salutes to that community there, because I was already installing them a few days ago. Virtuoso Bethesda, all they have to do is go to Nexus Mods to see the actual things that people want changed, because you could sort by downloads and be like, okay, this one was downloaded 300,000 times, so that one, maybe let's patch that. Let's do that. I know Bethesda knows this and Virtuoso knows this, but it's something that clearly they do care about this remaster. And going back to your point earlier about like which ones have the charm and which ones don't have the charm, I would say usually the charm is in the actual gameplay elements when you're playing the game, when you're running around and attacking and things like that. Some of the, obviously some of the scaling needs to be a little tweaked, but like the UI stuff, I don't know that I need the charm of seeing 1,000 keys in my inventory strewn about. I feel like that's not really charming. That's just annoying.
Oh, I agree completely. I think there is sort of a philosophical idea you can apply. Like, does the buttons you're hitting, are they interesting and do they matter? If you're playing the game and you're attacking an enemy, you're making decisions about potions to drink, those are important decisions that affect the game. But having to hit the same 3 buttons in the same order every time because that's the way you have to get to the map, that becomes annoying. So you'd like to think that from the player's decision to the action expressed in the game, maybe as few buttons as possible to make that action realized. But yeah, the UI in Oblivion definitely gets a little button heavy and scroll heavy, and where the hell is that item I'm looking for heavy.
That's a lot. It's a lot of the game. I will say also, I don't normally plug other stuff we do here, but Brought You This Thing has installed a number of mods for Oblivion Remastered on the video we're releasing this week. It's not out yet. It'll be out in a few days. Very, very tasteful, very gentlemanly mods that we have for Brought You This Thing. So if you want to know of there's a whole other side to the mods for Oblivion Remastered, and we showed those off a little bit on this week's episode.
That's right. Yes, it's in addition to all the menu tweaks, there's so many other things that are tweaked with those mods. So it's a fresh experience every time. What's wild is, I mean, some of the stuff you found, Bruce, is pretty impressive. But this is without Oblivion Remastered even officially supporting mods. It's just the ingenuity and desire of people to see certain body types in the game. We'll say that. So yeah, the tools are already in development, and there's already some really impressive work being done.
Boy, oh boy, isn't there ever? Here are some patrons that support our Inside Games Patreon every single month. They know their way around a mud crab or two, and like Lawrence was talking about before our episode, maybe they would like that mud crab booby mod, possibly. Maybe we'll add a few boobs on the mud crab. Wesley Mullins and AKM Scout.
Getting me all bubble-mouthed. I love it. Speaking of, I got a few more patrons to shout out that never met a potion they didn't drink. We got Pablo Garcia and Cash Putnam. Thanks for taking it easy and knocking a few back.